You know, I'm gonna let him introduce himself. He's a returning speaker. He was here about 7 or 8 years ago. He's not here. He's excellent. We have one of your books that you last time.
I saw that one. I just wanted.
Was the last one.
I got more.
Okay, he's got more books. Okay, that's great. Anyway, I want to turn him over. He's going to talk about his book dance.
Usually I get a different cue to start. Something like Steve Betchkal. So I want to ask you a couple questions. First of all, how many people here have a beloved cat and they're like crazy people? Okay. Did you know that scientifically they believe that 50% of the world's population is born with an empathy gene? And that empathy gene is what makes you more empathetic, obviously, but also allows you to bond more readily with pets. And so the people with the empathy gene are more likely to be pet owners. I often wonder in the world if Republicans were not born with that empathy gene. But that's not But people, Steve introduced me and said, I hate cats. No, I don't. I had a cat named Bob. His name was Robert. We called him Bob Kitty or Bob Cat for short. That's my dad's name, Robert. And so he was a beloved cat. He would lick my chin every morning. He loved to run his tongue on my neck hair, on my stubble. And I had to say finally, that's enough, and shoo him away. But he was a favorite of mine. My dad had farm cats too. So you will find that I'm not here to declare war on cats. I am here to declare war on the pet owners and their responsibility. So let's talk about a couple definitions first. Right? When we talk about cats, we do this all the time. People will say feral cats, right? Feral cats, or they'll say house pets, or they'll say tame pets, or they'll say free roaming. Let's get this clear. A feral cat is technically by definition a cat that is raised or is acclimated to being outdoors. I don't care. A free roaming cat is what we're talking about here. That is a cat that is acclimated to the outdoors or a cat that is released outdoors that is an indoor pet. So free roaming is the only definition that matters. People get caught up in this all the time. Feral cats, I don't care about that. Free roaming is what we're talking about because that's what matters. Free roaming cats kill birds. So we're talking about this conundrum in our society. This book here was published in 1916, and this is a page from it. They're talking about, in 1916, 109 years ago, they're recognizing already that cats are a problem. Now you can imagine, when the Mayflower came over in 1624, was it? Right? There were cats on that boat because they had rats on the boat. And so they would bring a cat along to exterminate the rodents on a ship because they had grain, they had food stores. And that's how they got over it. So for 400 years now, am I counting that right? No, how many years is it? Yeah, 400. We've had cats in North America, right? And the thing I'm going to talk about and point out as we go along is it's the same problem now than it was 100 years ago. And the same problem it was 200 years ago. Why haven't we done anything about it yet? Why haven't we as a society, as a culture? We know that bird populations have plummeted, and the reason we know is because of breeding bird surveys and Christmas bird counts, and since the 60s when those were established, we now know the bird population has dipped by about a third since that time. That's what we're guessing by the numbers, and who knows what before that. And if you look at the causes of bird mortality, basically the answer is people. There are too many people and too much pressure from people and human population on the environment, right? But if we talk about the non-natural causes of mortality, we bring up two. We talk about loss of habitat. Yeah, that's always in there because people are putting pressure on the habitat. But non-natural, we're talking about two causes. Collision structures, buildings, towers, windmills, whatever, and free roaming cats. 1 and 2. And there's an argument about which one is worse. It doesn't matter. They're both bad. And so the billions of birds a year are dying because they're running into towers.
I'm sorry, could you just check if you accidentally muted the microphone because it's not picking you up. So.
Well, it's either dead or off. Yeah, it's not on either way. Am I sounding any louder? Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Cats are a problem, and they're a problem for many reasons. We talk about cats as pets, but in fact they are outside and they are alien invasives. They're just as bad as garlic mustard, as brown rats, as Asian carp when they're outside. When they're inside, and this is where you got back to the empathy gene, they are a beloved pet. That's fine. That's fine. Just as much as dogs are, or goldfish, or reptiles in a terrarium, cats have a place indoors. I have no problem with cats. When they're outdoors, however, that's a catastrophe. That's an environmental disaster. So we talk about the number of free-roaming cats in North America, and if we talk about how many there are, I know in Eau Claire County the estimate is 27,700. That's because if you divide the number in Wisconsin by 72, that's what you get. Right? We don't know how many cats there are roaming free in Wisconsin. We don't know. It's a guess. In fact, I'm going to say this right now, but Dr. Peter Maher is coming to the southeast of Wisconsin near here on September 30th to give a talk, and he's coming to Eau Claire on October 1st to give a talk. He is a scientist from Georgetown who helped come up with the numbers, the estimates that we have now that are causing this kind of discussion of how many cats there are out there. But we believe that in Eau Claire County alone, where I am, there are 27,000 free-roaming cats. You can do it another way. You can say that if 1/3 of the population has cats, which is what we estimate, that have one cat in a town of 70,000 people, which is what I live in, how many cats is it? In excess of 20,000, right? Okay. So, how many are out there? How many are roaming free? How many are let out every day? We don't know, but it's too many, and they're killing birds. Exposure to wild habitat is bad for birds. That's another premise that's really critical to what I'm talking about and what we talk about. Dr. Peter Maher will talk about, all the scientists talk about this, is that it's not good for cats to be outside. It shortens their lives by 12 years on average. So anybody who loves a cat and tells you they're letting their cat outside because they love their cat is full of junk. Right? Because they're not doing something for their cat and they're not being humane to their cat. They're exposing it to all kinds of issues. And cats spread disease. Now we know, we have just found since January, that cats are a carrier of bird flu. Right? You can talk about all these other diseases that they carry that are contagious for humans and are in the poop that's buried in your garden when they're outside in the yard and you are gardening out there. All those things are problems, but also now they carry bird flu. The average that scientists come up with for cats is that if you let a cat roam outside, it's between 2 dozen and 3 dozen birds killed per cat per year. Again, that's how they get these numbers. Somebody once asked me, all right, if cats are a problem, how come bobcats aren't? How many scientists are out here? Scientists, raise your hand. You know about the food pyramid? Everybody knows about the food pyramid though? At the bottom of the food pyramid, there are all these plants, and then above that there are all these herbivores, and there are omnivores, and at the top are carnivores. So if you have this pyramid, and you look at what's in Wisconsin, or in any area of Wisconsin, you see what's at the top, a bobcat, let's say, right? There's one bobcat. And then under that are a lot of mice and a lot of grass, right? This is what the pyramid looks like with cats. That's the problem, is that there are all these predators, all these carnivores suddenly at the top of the pyramid. It's no longer a pyramid because it's overloaded. It's unbalanced. And that's why bobcats are the problem. Because we're pumping all these cats into the natural environment and ruining the balance. Any cat eats moles, chipmunks, squirrels, rabbits, amphibians, and insects. My neighbor Pete, whom I love, good friends with, going to the Packer game next week with him, has a cat. We had an over-the-fence conversation. He had an older cat that died, Clifford. Now he has Pepper. Pepper is a small tom. And toms can get big. My cat was bigger than Tom by about 10 pounds. Bigger than Pepper, I'm sorry, than by 10 pounds. Pepper's just a little cat. We did an experiment. I actually wrote this up for the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology. It hasn't been printed yet, but in 1921, Pepper killed 39 rabbits while on a leash. Cats are fierce predators, right? So Pete has this big yard. His yard is larger than this room. And he has a garden on the end of it. No trees in the yard, it's just open lawn. But the cat on a leash sits on the leash, and the rabbits just saunter by, eating grass, and he pounces on them and eats them, starting with the head, and he often leaves only the paws when he's done. So Pepper, this little Tom, can eat a whole rabbit, and he caught 39, and that was the record year. This year he's up to 19. Not done yet. But he has 19, killed 19, so on a leash. I've seen him kill moles, voles, chipmunks, and carry them in. I've never seen him kill a bird, because Pete has that cat constantly on a leash in the middle of the lawn. The birds aren't dumb enough, like a rabbit, to walk by a hunkered down cat. So they're fierce predators. That's one of the problems there are with them. And a lot of people say to me, I've never seen my cat kill anything. Because they're doing it when you don't see it. They're out at night. They're hunting at night, and they're devouring them from the starting with the head and leaving only the paws, right? So to say that, oh, my cat doesn't do that, that's a classic mythology that I hear all the time from people. So I'm going to say it again. Indoors can be a loving pet. Outdoors, This one's got a desert thrasher in his mouth. I want to liken the problem to a pipeline. And this is simplistic, but it really gets to the point. The problem is there are too many cats that are too easy to get and too easy to breed. And then there are too many people that decide, I didn't want a cat anyways, I realized that. And then they just let it go. In Eau Claire, we have a problem at the university where kids will want a house pet. And then they will keep the house pet until June, and then move on. They say, well, what do we do with this cat? Out the door. And I learned about this a couple years ago. What? You just toss the cat outside and go on home to mommy and daddy's place for the summer, right? So that's an example of this. It's so easy to get a cat pregnant and then have a litter of 5 cats, 6 cats, 8 cats, right? What do you do with them? Here, you want a cat? Here, do you want a cat? Here, they're free. Here, there's a box of kittens. Anybody? Sure, right? And then you take them, and then you do the same thing over and over again. Well, my cat just wants to be outside. I can't do anything about that. So go ahead, kitty, go outside. You want to be there. That's what you want to do. That's your nature, to be outside. And my first thought is, who's the boss here? But the pipeline is that it's way too easy to get a cat. It's far too easy to let it breed if you're not getting it neutered or spayed. And then it's far too easy to find, I'm not a pet owner. I don't have that empathy gene. I don't want this cat. So what do? I dump it at the Humane Association. I dump it outside. I know, I can't kill it. But I'll drive it in a car to a farm and open the door. There you go, kitty. Go out and you'll have a better life that way, right? My dad was a farmer. Anybody here a farmer? Do you know what happens at haying time? You understand? The mice are all gathered in the field, in the hay field, and the mower comes by. You know how many 3-legged cats or no-legged cats come out of that hay field? That's a kindness? It's absurd when you think about that, right? I already talked about this, but if about a third of the households have cats, that means you can figure this out. The U.S. is estimated to have 62 million pet cats, and if you multiply 34, the average number that a single cat, free-roam cat kills in a year, you get that number, 2 billion. One cat can have 100 offspring in a year because they can breed at 4 months. And so the one that is bred at 4 months can have another set of kittens in the same year. And that one can become pregnant in that same year. So it's kind of a scary thing when you think about all this, right? And then 3.2 million cats are delivered to shelters annually. Why? It's harder work than I thought. I thought I wanted a cat. I guess I don't. It's a harsh thing to say, but this is about pet owner responsibility. It's about human responsibility, and that's what the problem really comes down to, is what do we do with our pets? If I keep my pet on a leash, it's not killing birds. People say, well, I put bells on, I declawed it. Doesn't matter. A cat is too good a ferocious hunter to be stopped by bells, by declawing. Whether or not that's cruel or not, that's another argument. So it doesn't work. The only thing that works is to keep the cat indoors unless leashed without exception. That's the only thing that keeps birds safe. We know that. The pipeline says, the more you let out, the worse it gets. We have a problem now. People ask me this question all the time. What should we do about the cats that are out there now? And I'm gonna get to more of this in a second. But I said, my answer, nothing. We can't do anything about it. We have to wait for them to die. What we can do is keep more from going out. That pipeline, we have to stop the flow of cats in the pipeline, is what we have to do. And I'm gonna talk about this more in depth, but there are people, and I see this all the time. I'm a WCC member, Wisconsin Conservation Congress member, and I'll hear this all the time. People make cat jokes. They hear I'm about, an ornithologist, and I talk about cats, and go, yeah, we all know how to handle cats. I know that's going on. And that's another reason not to let them outside, is because I know hunters. It's like, oh, there's a cat. I'm kind of bored, and that was fun. That was fun to pop that cat. I know that's how it goes. That's not what I'm talking about. And as a cat lover and a nature lover, that's not the answer, right? So we have to do something else about cats and make sure that they're not killing birds. There's a scientist, his name is Troberst. He's a European scientist, did a paper. And it's interesting when he came to some conclusions. He said that if you talk about any other animal pet owners have no problem. Imagine if your dog was running around biting people. What would happen to you?
They put it to sleep.
Well, they put it to sleep. They'd have you fined. Your neighbors would hate you. There'd be all kinds of issues. So people don't allow their dogs to run around and bite people. You could have snakes, and snakes are better controlled than cats, right? But the problem is, you start to talk about it, and you come to the BRAW conference, and half the people leave because they don't want to hear you talk about cats, right? And so it's such a sensitive topic. No one wants to talk about cats, and no one wants to hear about cats. And if I start talking about cats, suddenly it's, you're a cat hater. If you remember a few years ago, the WCC tried to pass a law, and you remember it, that said, we want to make it legal to hunt cats. And what happened was, I don't know, was this 15 years ago? 20 years ago? The rooms at the meetings filled up. Righteous indignation. All kinds of women filled those rooms and said, cat haters, cat haters, cat haters. And that bill, no pun intended, was shot down, right? Because it was a cruel bill. It was made by cat haters. People that didn't care about cats, right? So all the women in the room were right. They were right. They were right to be furious and indignant because that was a bill by cat haters to say, we don't like cats anyway, so we just want to be able to have the right to pop them when we're out hunting. Yeah, that's not right. But because of that argument, people walked away, and then, whether it was 15 or 20 years ago, we still didn't do anything about it. And all the righteous indignation in the world did not cure or address the situation, and because of that, we're 15 or 20 years behind now. What should have happened in the room was, if cats are a problem, what should we do about them if shooting them isn't the right answer? And this is a talk about that. This is what we're trying to figure out. The idea that Troberst brought forward, and I agree with this, it's something as smoking, right? I remember back in 1990, right? I would go to the lunchroom, and I'm not a smoker. I hate cigarette smoking. I hate it. I don't have a gene for empathy for cigarettes. So I would be in that lunchroom, and I had to either sit there while people were puffing away, or I had to go find another place to eat lunch. Then this weird thing happened. By the late 1990s, suddenly the law turned around. And people were being told, no, wait a second, you can't smoke that cigarette at the lunchroom. And I was like, what? People were like, huh? That's my right to smoke my cigarette in the lunchroom. And then they said, well, now we're going to take restaurants, and you can't smoke in a restaurant. People said, what? I won't go to your restaurant anymore. That's the end of that. You'll lose business, and you'll go out of business because all the smokers, and it lasted about 6 months, right? And everybody came back to the restaurant because the burgers were too good to pass up, and they smoke outside now. It was the same thing. What we are facing here is an issue designated and controlled by people in the pet advocacy industry who don't want to get tough on their pet owners and on their cats, even though it's good for the cats. So it's an absurd argument to say, boy, if we get down, if we start to clamp down on how people release their pets, how people care for their pets, how we look after pets as a culture, that's going to be infringing on people's rights. Is the secondhand smoke good for you? No, neither is a free-roaming cat. And so the right is with the person who is being injured by the nature that's being injured, not the person who gets to smoke. It's not their privilege to smoke when you are being irritated by that in the lunchroom. And we know that's true in society. The same thing applies to cats. It's not the privilege of a cat owner to allow their cat to roam free when it's killing wildlife. And it's not good for the cat either. So Trowbridge called this a low-hanging fruit, and I agree. This is something that you talk about climate crisis. What do we do about climate crisis? Boy, yeah, a lot of work there. And we're already behind the ball. But with this one, it's so simple. Keep cats indoors unless leashed without exception. Start there. That's all we have to start with. It's that simple, right? I'm not talking about euthanasia, and here's why. Euthanasia, I'm going to get this time to slide. Here they are. There are 4 basic solutions, right? We talk about these 4 basic solutions. So one is euthanasia. Kill them. Take them out. There are 27,000 cats in Eau Claire County. Hire a hunter to start assassinating and exterminating cats in Eau Claire County. The problem with this is, the Eau Claire, well, you know, you're laughing because you know it is. Cat haters, cat haters, cat haters. And everybody in the Eau Claire County Humane Association will say, well, we don't exterminate healthy cats. This is a no-kill shelter. That's cruel, right? And so as a conservationist, this is what I say. Okay, I will honor that. But if you don't think euthanasia is a good answer, what's your next best solution? Give it to me. And the Eau Claire County Humane Association says, well, it's TNR. It's trap, never release. And I say, baloney. Scientifically, it doesn't work. And what's the problem, everybody? What's the problem with cat? You know what trap, never release is? You catch a cat. What?
They still kill birds.
They still kill birds and everything else, right? And it's not good for the cat. So trap, never release is all these big-hearted people, whom I love, I know them, say, all right, well, I'm going to go out and capture the cat humanely, and I'm going to neuter it, and I'm going to release it because, here's the argument, these are unsocialized cats. They don't do well indoors, right? And so, again, listen to the argument. Cat-centric. What's best for the cat is what's best for everybody. That's how it works. So no, as a culture, I say no. The answer is no to that. It's not what's best for the cat. It's not what's best for the cat. It's what's best for the habitat, the natural environment. It's what's best for the balance of our ecosystems. It's what's best for the cat. And that is not good for the cat. Now, the bottom, I've already talked about keep cats indoors, is the education approach. We have to educate people that the right thing to do is to keep cats indoors unless leashed without exception. Now, this is an argument I have with everybody. And nobody can come into the room and fill this room and say, cat hater, because that's a loving argument. That is an argument that puts forward the best practice for everybody and everything. And so that answer is wonderful. You have a question?
And they live longer if they're kept.
12 years on average. That's right. The permanent shelter is the oddball, but this is the thing. Up in Eau Claire County, they just built a shelter, a new shelter. $6.5 million it costs to build a shelter to accept animals and to hand them out. At no time did the Eau Claire County Humane Association consult with us about what to do. They never invited conservationists to the table about what to do about free-roaming cats. And on that $6.5 million property, they built no shelter that would take care of those unsocialized animals. What do? The solution in Eau Claire? They have an adopt a barn cat program.
Oh.
So they say, yeah, I hear the moans. They say, well, we have unsocialized cats. What we do is we say, you have a farm, you can come and get the cat, and we'll give it to you. The deal is, you have to confine it for 2 weeks in a stable shed or barn for 2 weeks. Because then, because it would kill birds otherwise. But then you're okay. Now, again, I come from a farm family. There is no barn, shed, or stable on earth that can permanently hold a cat. Absurd. Right? And it says right in the literature, for 2 weeks And then 2 weeks, and it's like, whatever, you're on your own, right? So, on that $6.5 million property, they did not make any effort to house those unsocialized cats. And what they say to me when we come to them, the conservation communities comes to the Eau Claire County Humane Association, I call them the NRA of the pet world. Because they know they're too big, they have all the support. They say to me, well, you want us to do something about it? Reenact trap neuter release in Eau Claire County. It's right now, it's illegal. You make trap neuter release legal again, and we're with you. And my answer is no. No, not only is it illegal, but it doesn't work. We talked about that already here, and it should be obvious to everybody, if we talk about it more, why trap neuter release doesn't work. All these mythologies. One is, you know, cats, if you remove cats from an environment, it's like a vacuum, more will just come in. Duh. Yeah, they have legs. And people keep releasing them into the environment, so yeah, more will come in. That's the answer right there. You can neuter all you want, and until you stop people from releasing them out of their houses and dumping them out of cars, yeah, you're going to constantly have more cats to trap, neuter, and release. I'm fine with the TN part of it. It's the release part that's the problem, right? You want to release them, here's my suggestion. On that $6.5 million, take $100,000 and build a shed the size of this room in a circle with a wire outer cage and a center which housing in it and straw and dirt so that it can defecate in it. And then house 50 cats at a time in that shelter for $100,000 and remove them from the environment of Eau Claire. That's my argument. And the ECCHA says, no, we don't have money for that. $6.5 million. And they get $250,000 a year from the city of Eau Claire to help manage cats. $250,000 a year. So you can see this NRA argument, right? So big they don't have to worry about a thing, they don't have to be accountable, and that really gets to me as a conservationist. All I want them to say is, okay, you hear us. No euthanasia. We don't want people shooting cats. We hear you. All right, let's promote the death out of keep cats indoors. Let's tell everybody. Let's promote it with you. We're with you, right? No more dog farm cats because that's not good. Right? TNR is not the answer, right? That's what I want to hear from my Eau Claire County Humane Association as we go through this process. There's Dr. Peter Morrow. If you look him up, he's in the New York Times and everything, all over the world talking about this. He prefers euthanasia. He believes we should be shooting cats because that's part of the solution and to get rid of them. Because otherwise we have to wait for them to die. They live 12 years in the outside. We have to wait for 12 years, but in the meantime, people are pumping more cats in, right? 1 second, hang on. Advance. Stuck. Try this. Huh. Not finger control, not touch.
Oh, I'm sorry, you did wrong.
You got a tech guy? Mike? Can we advance the slide, please?
The arrows.
Yeah, the arrow's not working. Thank you. So we talked about keep cats indoors. Unless leashed, without exception. This is a catio, by the way. This is a discussion I had with a neighbor. She was at first, you're a cat hater. I said, no, wait, let's just talk about this calmly as adults, right? And then eventually, over the course of months, she came to listen. She's a very, very sweet person. And she built a catio, which allows the cats to go outside and experience the outdoors without being outdoors and killing birds. That's not her. We were talking about this, the problem with cat center, how we have to reshape our values in society. In Eau Claire, I'm working with the Sustainability Advisory Committee and with the City Council. We're trying to redo our ordinances. You can see this is part of that pipeline process. You don't pay enough to license your cat. You don't pay enough to retrieve your cat from the Eau Claire County Humane Association. There's no fee for breeding a cat, and I think there should be. You should have to pay to breed your cat, and then you should have to annually renew that amount. They have it at 5 months of age, your cat has to be neutered. It's already breeding by a month at that time. I'd like to see it 4 months. So we're doing all these things in Eau Claire to try to change the way we look at this and make it harder and less cat-centric. It's going to be a little harder. And my first question I get is, you can imagine, is, no one's going to pay $100. They're just not going to license their cat.
Right.
They aren't now. How do we know? There's no measurement of all these cats, how many are actually licensed. And then there's another argument, well, no one's going to enforce this. I don't care. The issue isn't enforcement, it's education. It's to tell people and to send the message that don't put your cats out there, they're killing birds, right? That's the message. So again, the pipeline has to be addressed with education, it has to be addressed with the knowledge rather than punitive measures. This is the Eau Claire County Humane Association's $6.5 million building. Looks beautiful. They didn't have a single pamphlet in there about keeping cats indoors. I had to come and bring it to them. It cost me $12.50 to print 50 of them. I said, can you reimburse me? They said, no, we don't have the money. I'm not kidding. This is a view from the top. So, this is what it looks like to have a pen where unsocialized cats can live. It's not an inhumane thing, but it's you know, there's so many of them. This is Hawaii. Have you heard the story of Hawaii in Australia? They are going to shoot them in Hawaii because they've reached the end. They're an island. How many people have been to Hawaii? You walk around, and there are cats everywhere. I'm not exaggerating if I say that I walk around a hotel and there's a cat, 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 all over the island, right? Just like that. And so Hawaii and Australia, which are inundated with cats, islands, the endemic species in Hawaii are being decimated by cats and rats and other things that have been brought in over time, mongooses. So they said, we've reached the end, we can't do anything, we have to hire people to professionally exterminate these cats. There are too many. Hawaii, Australia is doing the same thing. I don't want Eau Claire County to go to that. And believe me, the Eau Claire County Humane Association doesn't want to do that. Here, in any county you're in, no one wants to go to that point where we have to hire a professional marksman to come out and start shooting cats. That's a whole can of worms. Right? But it's happening already because we have this problem we can't get rid of. And there's cat colonies, and again, it's viewed as kind-hearted people, very empathetic people think, well, there's all these cats. My dad, when he had cats on the farm, he would bring up every night the table scraps and feed them. They were still skin and bones. They couldn't eat enough. And here's one of those mythologies again. When we brought those cats over on the Mayflower at that time, it was logical to think that you needed a cat to kill the rats on your boat. Now, we have rodent-proof silos. We have electronic traps. We could put a cat on a leash anywhere you want to go after the rats you want, if that's how you see to do it. But I still hear people saying, oh, a farmer's got to have those to control the rodent population. Just listen to those words. Control the rodent population. Remember that pyramid? Yeah. You know how many mice there are on a farm naturally? And how many voles, and how many chipmunks, and how many things are that could eat a soybean? You know, there are thousands of them upon thousands on any farm, right? You can't exterminate all of them. And so the whole idea of a cat being there to tamp down the rodent population is absurd. I was in Racine County, that's where I grew up, and I remember the day I walked out and I found a bird on a coal pile. My dad and my family had farm burned coal at that time, right? And so the coal pile was in the farm, and on top of it was a bird body without a head. And as an ornithologist and bird watcher, I looked it up, it was a Kentucky warbler. I have never seen a live Kentucky warbler in Racine County in my life. I'm 68 years old. And there's a dead one on top of the coal pile that was killed and eaten by a cat. And the cat just ate its head and discarded the rest. Right? So my dad, I couldn't convince my own father that feeding those cats was a problem for birds. Of course, I was only 20 years old. But he's now deceased. But in my lifetime, I could not convince him at the time that he was working on the farm before he retired that he had to get those cats indoors because they were killing birds. Because he believed to his bones that they were a necessary part of agricultural life to have cats on a farm to kill birds. And you'll hear all these arguments. You know, people will say, well, it's mean to keep a cat indoors. You know, or, oh, a cat will not walk on a leash. You can't train a cat to walk on a leash. Of course you can. Of course you can. Oh, I can't stop it from getting out the door. It just races out the door every time I open the door. Really? Again, who's the boss? cost. Just, you know, if you don't have a foyer, then put the cat in the back bedroom then while you're going up. Put some water and some food in there, you know, whatever. It's a simple solution. Oh, I can't do anything about it. I'm helpless to keep my cat from going outside. I just have no patience for that argument. Yeah, this is an Australian picture. Public enemy number one in Australia. They had, I don't know if you know the stories, but they had to fight rabbits, right? In the island nations, cats are responsible for exterminating some amazing percentage of native wildlife wherever they land, but especially on islands, New Zealand, all these places that have islands, they're just, they decimate the population. All right, I'm gonna open up for questions in a second. I want to talk just for a second about my books. Muna already has one, good for her. I'm a local author, a self-published author, and of course Christmas is getting close. So I want you to think about that. I have my books here. As an artist, I have my 9th and 10th books ready. I want to tell you about them. The one is called Pajamas On and the Monster Mission. That's a kid's book. But the other one is called Stop Me If You Haven't Heard This One. And that one is getting ready. I'm going to India in February, and that's the last chapter I have to do for the book. So I can't publish my new books until I get boxes of books out of my basement. My wife says so. So I need your help. I need your help. Anyways, questions, please. Anybody? Yes?
I don't have a question, I have more of a comment. I mean, we're talking about shooting these cats. We're talking about shooting cats. When they are just the innocent critter here. They're not the ones that put themselves in this position. Maybe instead of shooting the cats, we should shoot the irresponsible cats.
Maybe an electronic cattle prod might work. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we should shoot shooting either. I agree.
Are you aware of
Whatever
any,
works.
veterinary schools that promote neuter release or have active programs?
Actually, this is an ongoing argument. The conflict is between veterinarians who are slowly becoming educated to the idea and converted to the idea of keep cats indoors. It's kind of like almost there. It's right in the middle. But I actually met, and as part of the WSO, a veterinarian who swore that TNR was the answer. And the answer was because, again, what do we do about these poor, unsocialized cats? They can't live in the house because they can't get along with other cats and they can't get along with people. So the kind thing to do is to let them outside. Right? Right? Gene, isn't that true? How do you argue that? No, it's not. And so, vet by vet, we're trying to convince people that what you have to say to your patients is, no, the thing you want to do is be kind to them, keep them safe indoors, where nothing can eat them, the traffic can't run them over, they can't starve, they can't chill to death, or, you know, they're not getting rabies or mange or great horned owls or red-tailed hawks. That's the kind.
I just want to say it's kind of a contradiction between dogs and cats. It used to be your dog stayed out on the farm. Now, your dog has to be inside. It's got dog footies if it goes out. It's really hampered yet with the cat. Go ahead, let it go out. So I don't know where the psychological differences in our heads. But
You'll see, even in city ordinance, you know, Claire, there's a city ordinance A. Every pet must be licensed. But then ordinance B is that, they have to be on a leash. Only dogs. Right? So it's a double standard. The cat can go anywhere it wants. But the dog, why? Well, because it's big and ferocious, it bites people, right? Or poops on the sidewalk. And that we gotta stop. But the cat can do anything it wants.
So it makes sense to me that the shelters are the ones that really need to get the education, because you're gonna go there because you're gonna adopt a cat, right? And if they say, we're gonna let you adopt this cat, you have to agree to keep it indoors. And there's where the education could start. And it sounds like, Claire's shelter is not there, but I have experience with the Dane County Humane Society, and the folks there, part of the application process, when you apply for a cat, do you plan to keep this cat indoors?
No, you're right. You're right. I'm glad to hear that Dane County is ahead of the curve on this. Don't get me wrong. But Claire, when people come up to adopt a cat, they say, is it doing it must be?
Yeah.
And are you going to keep it indoors?
Yeah.
But again, I don't think we're working hard enough at that, because they say that, and then what are they doing? Adopt a barn cat. Right? So there's a double standard, and when I say keep cats indoors on leash without exception, that's the exception. Yes, when you get your cat, are you gonna keep it indoors? Okay, but we're gonna let these cats go free in Oak Park County on a farm. See, that's a double standard, which says to me, you're not getting it, right? You're not really understanding what the problem is here. And that is a huge issue with me.
So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for pressing a really challenging and difficult issue.
Yeah.
I've taught environmental science for years and years, and it was always a struggle to get that message across
So
to students who were environmentally aware. So thank you for doing that. And also, I think that there are approximately 30 to 33 veterinary schools in the United States. So it might be really great to get this message out to the young people that are coming into veterinary science. 33 vet schools, you never know, maybe there's a chance to really educate them, like you said, some of vets don't want.
I contacted the veterinary groups in Wisconsin and nationally, asking if they had, first of all, if they promoted keep cats indoors, and whether or not they were for TNR or against. None responded, and none could say to me that did respond, no, we are absolutely against TNR, because they're shy on that. And so vet by vet, we're trying to do this now. What I ask of you is, we're doing in Eau Claire County, we're working on, what are you doing in your county? Right? What are you doing with the people in your county, and what message are you giving for those bluebirds and for other nesting birds, the tree swallows, whatever it is that's in your yard, and the cats are getting at, not just ground birds, but all these birds that are being mobbed by cats. What are you doing for those, and how are we keeping this under control?
Stan Temple from the University of Wisconsin did some research on what happens to farm cats out in the country, and the numbers that he came up with were astonishing. Do you have those numbers?
Yeah, no, I do not, but that's part of the same lineage of information that now Mara is doing. He's following in Stan Temple's footsteps, and they're doing that. There's a different group of people out of Georgetown and some different scientists. But yes, Stan Temple was one of the early people. And you know, Stan Temple was crucified in public for a lot of things he said about cats. And some of those things were, again, not necessarily what I'm saying. Some of them were, we need to euthanize. And so the idea that I have found that I don't even engage euthanasia. I don't engage it. It's not an option for me, because all it does is get emotional and people hear nothing else. You just want to kill cats. I talked to the board of the Oak Park County Humane Association very calmly, very politely, and I had people there, a guy say to me, I see right through you. You're a cat hater. You just want to euthanize cats. No, I am not a cat hater. But they were convinced that anybody who stands up there and says something about cats hates cats. And it's just impossible.
Well, what if we turn that around and say, but you're a bird hater? You're a bird hater.
Well, what I did turn around and say, you are called the Oak Claire Humane Association. Turning cats loose outside is inhumane.
Yeah, that's good.
That's the message.
This is something we should be addressing with universities. They should not allow students to have a pet in a dorm room. And landlords, I know a lot of landlords will allow pets because they don't think they can get the tenant without a pet, but then the tenant leaves and they do like the students do, they just leave the animal go. This is something that also needs to be addressed with landlords and university dorms.
No, I appreciate it. Then we'll work on drinking. And then I'll putting their couches up on the curb after they leave. No, seriously though, you're right. Education is essential to this, and it starts at every level. And so everybody who's about this, and everybody who even thinks about having a cat, should be directed by these simple premises. If you're gonna have a cat, there's no way, no way you can have an unneutered or unspayed cat.
And you just let it go when you don't want it anymore.
That's irresponsible.
Raw members should be aware that we distributed 160 free nest boxes as part of our Driftless area program this year. But we have a screening questionnaire. And one question was, do you have any free roaming cats, to the best of your knowledge, on your place? And if you said yes, you didn't get a box.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, I think, that we need, as a community, We need to, as a community, start to really hammer that message home. I like a cat, I don't like a cat, whatever. The thing to do that's good for cats and birds is only one answer. It's not euthanasia, it's not TNR, it's keeping them indoors and being responsible, and getting neutered and keeping them safe from birds, right? So they don't kill birds. That's the answer. And we need to say that every single time this comes up. That's the answer.
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.